Welcome to Rocket Ship, the podcast where web developers learn the skills and secrets to ship awesome mobile apps. I'm Simon Grimm, creator of Galaxies.dev, and today's guest is Catalin Miron, who looks like Max Verstappen on his profile picture. Welcome to today's podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Simon. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, you're an amazing host, definitely. I lost my hat. And my glasses, so nobody is going to even recognize me. So yeah,
exactly. Yeah, but when I first saw your picture, I was like, "What is this, Max Verstappen?" But anyway, I also told everyone on Twitter that you're the master of React animations. Probably you share that throne with William Candillon, who's also doing some epic things. The best description about I found you is you're a nomad developer. So could you let us know where the nomad currently lives and what the nomad is currently doing?
Yeah, I used to be a nomad developer. So as you mentioned, my name is Catalin Miron. I'm currently a mobile lead working at 11 labs. I have just recently joined. Well, I'll basically lead the effort to bringing text-to-speech creation on the user's pockets through, of course, React Native. Before that, I was actually working for a small startup in Bucharest called Hootsuite for almost 5 years. And back then, I was doing React, and React Native wasn't actually announced. So a colleague of mine went to React.js conference in San Francisco, where Facebook or Meta have announced React Native, and whoever was in the audience gained access to React Native private repository 2 or 3 months prior to the release. So I was really excited because, I was also learning Swift back then. Jumping to React Native was really easy because you have the same paradigm, right?
Right.
And I have actually created the very first complete application using React Native, only for iOS because Android was not supported back then, which was a Dribble clone. Like if you like good UI, you most probably have heard about Dribble.
Yes.
So I've built that, and then I saw so much enthusiasm from the open source community. So I was doing more and more open source and animations as well. We will go to that part. But I had a newborn. My daughter was born, so I couldn't do React by day and React Native by night. So I had to somehow look for different opportunities. And I saw that Skype was doing it. So I have applied I have received the job, and I had to relocate from Bucharest, Romania, to Czech Republic, Prague. And I joined Skype. It was really nice. They were doing React Native, Electron, everything pretty much. A lot of opportunities arise. Like I gave a talk at React Native Europe in 2019, talking about how Skype is doing cross-platform solution through React XP.
That was still kind of early days for React Native in 2019, right?
Yes, it was. I was doing for 2.5 years prior to that. So
Skype was a really, really early adopter of React Native then.
Yeah, I think it was also one of the biggest one like the biggest React Native consumer. Yeah, definitely it was the biggest Electron consumer. Like we had mostly 50 million active users or something like that. So it was quite big on the desktop side. But a lot of great things came from Skype development team, like this cross-platform solution, but also React Native macOS was first introduced internally for Skype specifically, also React Native Windows and things like that. So it was great. But on a side, I was also doing animations because I really love animations in general. I like good UI. I like giving life to static UI through animations, right?
Yeah.
And prior to any React Native experience, I actually have written a really popular, it seems so, blog post on Tuts Plus, which is this platform for creating a lot of tutorials. So I have created an article about CSS animations because I was doing CSS, why not, right? And I was pretty good more than decent, I would say, to animations. So yeah, a long time ago, I actually found out UI animations. So yeah, I was doing on React as well, React Native even more. So I have started a series called Learning by Doing, where I was basically taking UI animations from Dribble, Pinterest, Instagram, and try to reproduce them on React Native side. It was quite fascinating. A lot of learnings. Of course, the learning curve is quite steep, but after a point, I was like, okay, let's do that, and more. And I had the opportunity to give a talk at App.js conference, the first edition, and I had to prepare myself, right? I didn't give any talks in front of a large audience, so I said it's the best place to start a YouTube channel where I'll expose myself and get rid of that imposter syndrome, anxiety, and things like that. So I have also started to do YouTube videos, and that actually helped me out, and also saw the opportunity there because, not a lot of YouTube videos were about animations, especially in React Native back then. So it was quite fun.
That's interesting. So what year was that? Like 2020 or something? When was your talk?
Actually, I believe 2019. So April.
How did you do animations with React Native back then? Was it different to how it is now?
Yeah. So everything started with Animated API. It's basically this API exposed by the React Native core, where you can animate elements or views, right? Initially, there was no performant way of doing it because everything was running on JavaScript thread. Lately, Meta have announced the Use Native driver. This says that some of the properties that you like to animate can run on the UI thread, which is way more performant because in this way you keep the JavaScript thread unblocked, right? So some of the animations could be made on the UI thread. So unfortunately, only a couple of attributes were possible to be animated on the UI thread, like transforms and opacity, and that's it. So I had to wrap, and it was really challenging, right, to animate things in a performant way. So I had to wrap around to wrap my head around, like, how can I make such animations performant using only transforms and opacity. So it was really challenging, right, with Animated API. A lot of boilerplate, of course, like staggering elements But this is how everything have started, right? From Animated API. Then we also had the native driver, so more performant ways of animating things, of course, in a challenging way, but really fun on the same time. So you could barely do quite a lot of things, right? But then Reanimated was announced. So most of my YouTube videos actually are related to the Animated API because there is a problem if you are going to be hired by a big corporation or a big startup, and you already have an existing React Native application. It's really hard to upgrade your dependencies, right? So you might be stuck in time, and you cannot upgrade on using Reanimated, for example. So I think Reanimated, because it's already coming with React Native, should be learned by everyone. So it's like the concept is the same, but the library is different, right? So more capabilities on Reanimated side, which is another animation library built by Softautomation, but also with Animated API. The concept and the mindset should be the same, but I was doing a lot of Animated API, and I said there is no way for me to do it anymore because there are 3 versions of this React Native Reanimated library that helps you create animations on React Native. The first version, I had to skip it completely. I didn't like the API. Everything was really verbose, and the boilerplate was really
I heard big. that the first version was really challenging.
Yeah, so I left that to other developers to do animations with it, right? So when Reanimated version 2 was announced, the paradigm has completely shifted to like everything was really declarative and everything made sense. You are just playing with numbers and you're saying move from this number to this number using this timing function, which was mind-blowing.
Yeah, I joined Reanimated now at version 3. Basically, and like I had some initial problems in general how it works, but once I had like the first few animations in place, I was like, okay, this is always the same. Use shared value, use animated style, use the value in your component, and then with timing, with string, with whatever.
Exactly.
And I mean, there are a lot more complicated cases in what you're doing on your channel, but that's pretty much the basic, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I think. For whoever would like to join this animation community on React Native, I highly recommend my talk from last year, which is 2022, from App.js conference, where I actually showcased the required primitives from React Native Reanimated library that you need to know in order to start animating things. And there are not that many things that you need to use pretty much. So it's a shared value hook, which will define your reactive value. Use shared value, it's a value that's going to be accessible from JavaScript thread, but also UI thread, hence the name shared, right? You can change from both direction, both sides, and use animated style pretty much, which if you are going to add a shared value inside it, and return a list of style attributes, that's going to be like a reactive set of styles. So whenever you are going to change the shared value, that reactive style is going to change as well. So applying it to a view, everything is going to be in sync pretty much.
And on top of that, I think that's one of the improvements of version 3 of Reanimated, that you can now directly use the shared value on your component. Like you can basically skip the styling definition, like creating your animated style sheet. You don't have to, in case you just need like 2 shared values that you can then directly use on an animated view.
Yeah, exactly. It's called inline style.
Yeah, right.
And you can use it directly into a view. But if you'd like to use interpolations, for example, even for background colors, you definitely need to move it to the use animated style.
I definitely want to get into interpolation later as well, because I've seen it in your talk, and I skipped that talk and definitely recommend it to everyone as well. The animations should be fun from App.js. Gonna put a link in the show notes. That was really great, but I also the part about interpolation, I was like, what exactly? what do I have to do? So that brings me back to what you said a few minutes ago. About when you got started with animations and the learning curve it takes. So you said you had like a natural interest in animations. And what was it really like in the beginning? Did you really just look at something online that you found, like some really small animation, and then just try to copy this one by one? Or what's an approach that people can take to? Because I really like animations. Whenever I see something like this, I'm like, wow, this is great. And then I look at your website. By the way, I'm going to put this in the show notes as well, reactnative.com. Check it out, everyone. Then I look at this site and I'm like, Catalin already created all these great animations, so maybe I don't have to learn this because it looks really challenging. And but then I think a step further and say, okay, I'm going to take some of his animations and then I just change 3 values and everything crashes, because I've done this before. You purchase a template, you have no idea what you're doing, you change 2 values and suddenly like everything flies out of the view and nothing works anymore. So I think it's definitely important to have a basic understandings and how can I get this? How can I get started?
Yeah, this is what I'm trying to figure it out, because it's called the curse of knowledge. I can't remember, and most probably I'll never remember how I got started, right? But definitely I can point to some different resources or things that you should kind of like be aware of, right? The first you should definitely know the primitives that you're dealing with from any library, animation library, right? Like in case of Reanimated, you should know that what's a shared value and how you can use it, and how you can react to style changes based on that shared value. Because in the end, like animations, it's only style related things, right? So you are changing the UI in a way, you are shaping the UI, you are morphing the UI in a way through gestures, through scrolling, or simply just UI animations without any like micro interactions underneath, right? So you need to first start from how to change a style attribute. This is, I believe, the most important one. And in Reanimated, you have a shared value and you attach a style through use animated style.
Right.
On the animated API, it's quite different, I would say. So most of the styles are kind of like inline. So you have an animated value that can start from any value, and inside the animation, you return a style. So in the end, everything is returning a style, right? But the way how you are doing it's quite different. Let's say comparing animated API with Reanimated. But I think the docs, the fundamental sections from the documentation website around animations, especially the Reanimated, it's pretty straightforward on what you need to learn and how to get started. So moving an element from 0 pixels to 100, it's a way to start, for example, how to do that, right? And then you can extrapolate that. Oh, how can I apply a different border radius, but only when the animation is from the middle until the end, right? Not from the beginning. How I'm going to do that? Well, the answer is interpolate. Well, how I'm going to interpolate, what's in interpolation, what's in a linear interpolation, or LERP for short, or how can I apply a different background color based on the progress. So think about an animation as a progress from 0 to 1 and what's going to happen in that case, right? So you propagate in your head, okay, so for 0 to 1, I need to move from 0 to 100, so I need to multiply this by 100, let's say, or something. Or again, remapping values. Remapping values immediately in your head should click to interpolation. Everything is around interpolation, so I'll repeat this. Others are, Cedric was repeating debugging, App.js. Ivan was mentioning routing. And I'll be doing interpolation because that's the king.
So what does it, like, if you have to define the word, what does interpolate mean? Is it just like how a value changes on like a timeline from 0 to 1, or?
It's more than that. It's remapping a value from a particular range to another range. So let's assume that you have a value that's changing from 0 to 1. Mm-hmm. You interpolate that value past an input range, which is the segment that you're interested in. It shouldn't be like the max and the minimum value of that shared value, but it can be a small segment, and you want to extrapolate that or remap that to different values. Like I would like to have from 0 to 1 the value 0 to 100. So in this way, when the value is changing from 0 to 1, the output of that interpolation is going to be from 0 to 100. Or if you're just interested in, let's say, changing the opacity when the animation is in the middle until the end, but the rest you don't care about, you can interpolate the value with the input range 0.5 to 1 and the output range. And in more addition to that, the linear interpolation provides you different ways to clip or clamp the animation. So if you're not interested in the outside domain of the animation or just into that input range, you can clamp it. So only this segment I'm interested in. I don't care if the animation is going to go beyond that. I'm just interested in 0.5 to 1 domain and do whatever with it. But in some cases, you can clamp it on the left, for example, because it's also going 0 to 0.5. What's going to happen there? Maybe you would like to do something else. So an interpolation is how am I going to remap an existing value to some other value and do something with it.
I think that's a great description. I think gives me a good mental model for all animations. So in the past, or just recently, I did another Deliveroo clone tutorial for YouTube, and I really also like to include these kind of micro interactions that you see in apps like Netflix or WhatsApp. You sometimes don't notice them, but like, example, you click in the search field and the search field just slightly decreases and there comes in like the cancel button. It's nothing you have to do. It could just plop and you wouldn't notice, but it's just like, it's so cool. And the way I did it in the past for these kind of animations was always to break it down in like the different steps, or also when you have something bigger going on, like let's tackle one by one. Let's first add, like do the transform, then I add the opacity, then I add something else on top. Like I feel like that is how big animations come together. Is that your experience from doing like hundreds of animations as well, that you like start, let's transform X, then let's do the Y, then maybe change the color. Is that how you approach it?
Yeah, now because you mentioned, I actually remember and it's also happening nowadays with the complex animation. I usually download or even record my screen and play it frame by frame to see all the movement, right? Because it's really hard to see with your naked eye, right?
Yes.
So as you mentioned, because I actually gave a talk exactly about this subject, about micro interactions at React Day Berlin a while ago. Micro interaction is not, it shouldn't be like a tiny animation, and usually you nailed it when it's not noticeable. So if you are doing a micro interaction that's not noticeable, but it's like the natural way of experiencing, like, I don't know, a transition or things like that, this is where it's actually a good micro interaction. But usually playing frame by frame to see all the transitions, it's a good place to start as well. And always rewind it. Okay, now another square popped up, and you can reconstruct basically frame by frame, because it's just going frame by frame, it's a good thing to do. It's of course time consuming, but after a while you get used to it. So
So looking at some examples or on what are good places online where you can find UI examples these days? Is it still Dribble, or are there any other platforms you recommend?
Unfortunately, I'm still looking at on Dribble. It's not the same platform as it used to be. I say unfortunately because there are not that many UI movements or motion designers focusing on micro interactions or UI animations nowadays, especially on Dribble. But still, Dribble, it's a way to go. I follow quite a lot of great agencies as well that I have to go there manually pretty much. And I also have a list on Dribble, which I can share the link afterwards with you, so you can put it in the description.
Definitely, yeah.
It's called Learning by Doing, and I think it's a list of almost 200 different animations. Most of them I have already coded in React Native, but it's a great place to start from beginners to like advanced, pretty much.
Yeah, I think that's a great place. So you said that you still think we should get the basics of Animated from React Native, right? Right now, are you only using Reanimated for your, let's say, if you would do a new YouTube video right now, would you pick Reanimated or would you go with Animated? And if I want to learn like the basics of animation, and I already learned like React Reanimated now, should I still get back and like give Animated from React Native a try just to like understand what's there?
No, you should not give it a try. Unless you are working in an environment, for example, that is stuck with Animated API.
Okay, yeah, that was the same when I talked to Cedric about learning Expo. I think the only valid argument to not use Expo is if, like, the company, you're a freelancer and you have to work with old React Native and they don't use Expo. So
exactly. But the paradigm is the same. The concept of animations, it's the same. The code and the syntax differs pretty much. Of course, on the Reanimated part, you are going to have access to a lot of other properties or hooks that you can use, like use animated props, which is the counterpart of use animated style, but for non-style attributes. Like you have a path inside an SVG, and you can morph between different paths recalculating basically the path based on an animated value. And not only, you can also change the default value, for example, of an input and animate that, right? So because this with input, for example, you can use animated props instead of animated styles for animating from 0 to 100 a number, right? Because you have a timing function.
Yeah.
How fast or in what way am I going to reach the destination? Pretty much, it's a timing function. It's linear timing. It's easy in out, or spring or decay as well. If you're
it's
using
great
gestures.
that Reanimated has all these defaults for
Exactly.
noobs like me.
Right, is like that's the reason why I will not suggest to go to the animated API, because those are still there, but not everything, right? And it's pretty hard to create something using animated API. So if you can jump into Reanimated, I don't see why you shouldn't. But yeah, those things like animated props is really powerful as well, because you can have a component, you just use Reanimated, and suddenly you can animate the properties as well, not only the styles. So
Interesting. I haven't done that before. I think I just skipped that part.
It's amazing. I think it's really great way to deal with those things. It's also scrolling. It's another thing that with animated API requires a lot of boilerplate, and you still and it's not performant, right?
Okay, so
you are running into performance issues. Yeah.
Now I feel better about just jumping straight into Reanimated. I thought I made a mistake, but then I feel better. Okay. But I do have another question. As I recently saw on your channel, you also talked about something called Moti, and I think you also mentioned this in the app.js talk. What exactly is... I did a poor background check on Moti, but I think you also had a stream with the creator of Moti about 2 years ago. So what is Moti? What additionally brings it to React Native next to Reanimated?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I had a live streaming with the creator, Fernando Rojo, exactly after he actually released Moti. So I was playing with it during the day, or maybe the day before, and I have reached out to him, hey, we should do a live streaming, and we did it. It was really great. And in a nutshell, Moti, it's a cross-platform animation library built on top of Reanimated, which has the same API as Framer Motion. So it's pretty much a state-driven animation library, in my opinion. Of course, you can do more with that, but this is where it shines, when you have a state change based on which you'd like to animate something. I will give you an example without too much boilerplate. So it's really declarative, right? So you have a from object, which is a styled attributes object. You have two style attributes, and everything is going to be animated in between, right? So you have an opacity 0 from opacity 0 to opacity 1. This is going to be automatically animated. But if you are going to be pressing a button, let's say, to toggle this visibility, you can have an inline style from animate opacity if it's true 1, otherwise it's 0. So it's really powerful for state-driven animation, I would say. Okay. I have built quite a lot of animations, especially around micro interactions. So micro interactions in Reanimated requires some effort as well, right? Because you need to hook everything. You need to the boilerplate will start to grow. Yes. Once you would like to really be pixel perfect, I would say. And especially with sequences, right? Let's say that you like to show a square, then move it to a circle, move it up, and then left, right, like a wiggle. It requires some additional work. But with Moti, it's just a matter of sending an array of different values, and everything is going to work. Exactly, right? It's a sequence of different
I found that to be like somewhat challenging with Reanimated. I don't know. It probably was me, but I was looking at some more complicated examples where they used like with timing, with sequence, and everything combined, and suddenly you had like this huge function, and you like in easy animations, you can basically tell, okay, it's animating from this to that, but then you have like the sequence and the timing and delay, and you're like, I have actually no idea what's going on in this block. So would it make those cases easier?
Yes, definitely. You have a transition config, basically, that you can send to Moti, which can be like delay, for example. You can specify duration. You can also specify the type of the function. It can be a spring. It can be a timing function. And underneath, Moti is going to recreate basically the entire chain that you have mentioned, right? And instead of doing this chain, you just specify some numbers and everything is going to work out of the box. And it's going to be not that trivial to write like a sequence with an initial delay and some repetition as well, because the way how you are going to structure the inheritance there really matters, right? Because you cannot just start a sequence before the delay, and it's getting more and more complicated and Moti actually have removed this layer. He removed the layer of complexity, especially with those sort of animations.
I think Fernando Rojo, I just looked it up in my Twitter messages. He's actually also joining the podcast in a few weeks.
Oh, nice.
So I'm looking forward to talk about that. I also just looked on GitHub. So Moti sits at 3.5k stars. Not too many, but that's like a solid start. And I think what you said is important, but also it says React Native plus web animation library. So I think that also makes a big difference, because Reanimated...
I mentioned cross-platform, and in my head it's always web as well. It's like, this is one thing that we actually have completely forgotten about. So Reanimated, one more and additional thing about it is that it's a really cross-platform solution. So it's iOS, Android, web, and lately React Native Windows, React Native macOS, and Vision OS. So it's like a truly cross-platform. And because Moti relies on it, it's also cross-platform, right? So if you are doing cross-platform, mobile plus web is definitely another good thing, right? To have such great library that's going to help you, pretty much achieve the same animation, and its performance as well.
Yeah, that's nice. So that also ties into that Tamagui will also be discussed on the podcast soon, because Tamagui is also React Native and web. And basically
he's actually doing, right?
Moti,
Yeah, so he has drivers for different animations. I'm pretty sure that Nate is going to discuss more, but he have exported like different drivers for animations. It's Reanimated, in the works, I believe, Moti, and Animated API. So
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So everything comes together. I didn't plan this, so that was kind of my luck. But I'm going to put a link to Moti as well in the show notes. Definitely going to try this. As like, if I would put it easy, could I say it's like a wrapper around Reanimated to make it even easier for me in some use cases?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think, and it's not adding that much to the bundle. It's maybe 20k or 30k.
Okay.
Because it relies on Reanimated, and whatever sits on top is the diff, right? So
nice.
If you can upgrade or use Reanimated, I don't see no point in not using Moti. Just for different.
So some quick wins can be achieved with Moti then, instead of just going the full cannon of Reanimated.
Especially loaders and state-driven, like micro-interactions. Nice. It's perfect.
Nice. Gonna check that out. Before we wrap up, I quickly also want to talk about probably your biggest project, which is animatereactnative.com. Currently sits at 107 animations. I can save up to 749 hours of work. I don't know how you calculated that, but I trust you on that number. So what is Animate React Native? Are you still working on it? And how are you doing with it? That last question comes from me being a creator and being interested.
Thanks for I will shamelessly plug this animatereactnative.com. It's a website, web app, or platform that's going to give you a collection of React Native animations and a collection of components that are animated using Animated API, Reanimated, Moti, with gesture handlers, and also incorporate maths and a lot of animations. And like those are, I believe, problems and solutions to problems which I have encountered during my early days in React Native until today, pretty much on side projects, different clients, and needs from this community, pretty much. So it's a really big collection of different animations, and I plan on adding more and more on a weekly basis. So if I'll be coding something, I'll be adding there. So how this is working, it's also for individuals and teams. So if you are a team, you can purchase a lifetime license, which is going to give you like unlimited updates and be there for you waiting. Some of the animations are copy pastable with TypeScript support, so you can copy the entire code, which is going to be available to you directly on the web platform, copy it into your project IDE, and everything is going to work. And as you mentioned, you can play around with numbers, right? Because that's like a really niched UI, right? But you can also customize it. You can add your own views, buttons, whatever you'd like to display, but with the same animation. So pretty much everything is copy pastable. And in addition to that, I have also created a 10+1 shared element transition using the old way of doing it, using a React Native shared element package that's based on React Navigation v5. But now I'm in the works of rewriting everything using the shared element transition from Reanimated, which unfortunately we didn't have time to discuss. But if you plan on watching my video, my talk from React Native Europe, definitely I have touched there quite a lot. But it's a collection of premium and ready to use components for React Native.
Yeah, I just scrolled through the whole page, and I think, just being honest, it just looks awesome. I haven't purchased it myself, so I can't say what's in, but you do a great job of showcasing all the animations. Like when I just scroll on that page, it just looks so awesome. I think this is a great way of just directly showcasing upfront what users are getting. And so, for example, I'm a big fan of Tailwind CSS, and I immediately purchased Tailwind UI because I can copy paste that stuff. So for everyone who likes animations, I think Animate React Native should be a no-brainer, because it's just like Tailwind UI, but for React Native animations. And I don't know if I will spend 749 hours, but that doesn't matter. I think I won't
for me it was 7 years. So I don't know, you can do the math. So 2 hours a day, most probably 3 hours a day. But definitely Tailwind UI was an inspirational project for me. So I took quite a lot of inspiration from their side. The only problem with animations is that you cannot categorize those. Even though you can somehow categorize like menus and list animations, it's not the same as creating different sections for your website. So I couldn't categorize those. But you still have the search menu functionality, which I'm planning on refactoring this way of navigating on the website, more like Tailwind UI is doing. So it's going to help you in finding the right solution. It's Tailwind UI, it's amazing. Definitely agree with you. I also have a license there, so I think
there are some categories like you probably have a lot of these slide category, like you do slides and like Tinder cards or whatever transition you do in the background of cards, carousels. Then you have like some micro animations. You have like how the view enters, how the page builds up, that sort of thing. And while you probably can't use like exactly those things, just playing around with it and integrating it in your code should probably give you a really nice boost in your application. So usually I work alone, and when I do indie apps or so, they rarely have any kind of animations, because as a solo developer, you usually focus on like just get the MVP out. Let's just see if this works. But if I could add some animations, I think it makes a difference in apps, especially what you said before as well. If you don't notice that something is an animation, or like you don't know why or what happened, I think then it's perfect. And Apple is really good at that usually. But if we can do this,
it's a must. It's a must for any mobile app. If you really want to stand out from the others and like the competition, you really need to integrate some animations, because it's a must for mobile users. They really want to see something different compared to the web. Even though the web is catching up nowadays, still on the mobile, users have different needs and expectations. So definitely micro interactions should be one expectation. And you should always think about, you should definitely use the app. So if you don't like it, just make it shine in a way, right? So instead of having everything static, you can achieve quite easy with layout animations as well, how they appear, disappear. I have also open sourced a library for staggering elements. Like you just need to wrap your list of elements with this component, specify the delay for each individual element animation, and voila, everything is there, right? Those things are really a must from my perspective, and users really want to see those kind of interactions and animations. Not too much, so you should not animate everything, right? Like you should have also a sense of how many things you can animate, but don't overdo it, but definitely do some. And I keep saying this to all my previous clients and developers that I have discussed with. Don't leave animations at the end, because you'll never do it, as you mentioned. Also start some little animations while creating that feature or integrating some components, because with Reanimated, for example, you already have layout animation out of the box. You already have 70 different pre-built animations for you. So you can easily incorporate some, and also talk with your designer, the team. Hey, this is how easy it is. Can we do something? Can we add something? Because I believe there's no point in having and leaving at the end is not going to no for MVP you'll never go back. So I've been there, done that. So as you mentioned, it's like, no, we're not going back to that animation. No, let's do some other new features, right?
Right, yeah, I think those are perfect last words and a great reminder for everyone, especially for me as well. I'm in the starting phase of a small application with a friend. It's just like tracking the tides at the North Sea. So it's really like,
nice.
Let's say weather application. It's really boring, but still, I would have approached it just like you, like putting in the data and showing something, and I would left it until the end. So I will now make it a priority to at least have one animation before we ship that first MVP. So thanks for the motivation and the reminder again.
Yeah, and definitely this is my perfect slogan. I came up last year with it. I don't know how, but we are going to be failures without failing. So failing and repetition, I think, is going to make us great animators, for example, in React Native, because this is the number one thing. Everyone suck at animation, but they don't want to jump in because they are afraid. So
yes,
it's okay. I was also really bad initially. So with time and with a lot of failures, I somehow succeeded, I believe.
Yeah, I think being afraid is definitely a reason for many, at least for me as well. I look at you look at William Candil and what he's doing with Skia, and I'm like, I can never do this. Like, I have to study math to just do these calculations that you do, or interpolation.
Unfortunately, math plays actually a really important part of the animations, but that's for more advanced features. You don't need to know math initially, but at a point in time, you definitely need to know at least how to calculate some distances between two different points, or some angles, some Pythagoras is your friend, most probably, in all the animations. So some parts, but not everything, like no limits or sum from x equal to 0 to k and things like that. No, that's not the case, but some parts, yeah. William is doing an amazing job as well.
Right. Yeah, William, if you hear this, still want to get you on the podcast. But we're running out of time. Let's wrap up. I always end with 5 quick questions. So here are my 5 quick questions for you. Number 1, Star Wars or Star Trek?
Wow. I would say Star Wars. I'm not watching neither of them. So
Okay, yeah, that's fine as well. And Mac or Windows?
Mac.
Good. Your favorite IDE?
Used to be Sublime, but now I'm Visual Studio Code, yeah.
Okay. Latest discovered package, library, or service that you can recommend to people?
Animate React Native / Marquee.
Okay, gonna put this in the show notes. Interesting. And finally, something that made you happy this week.
Oh wow! Coming back from React Native Europe and stay with my family.
Oh yeah.
Most probably.
I can definitely see that being me as well. I don't like to be away from my family, so I will release you to your family. I heard your daughter, I think, in the beginning, so I hope everything's all right.
It's okay.
Just to wrap it up, where can people find more about you? Where are the places people should go?
Definitely on my Twitter, you can check everything. It's Miron Catalin, MIRON CATALIN, Twitter handler. And also check my YouTube channel. It's Catalin Miron Dev. And last but not least, give animatereactnative.com a try. I also have this neon.
Yeah, it sometimes focuses. For those listening, there's an Animate React Native sign in the background of Catalin. But his camera is so good that it's so blurred.
Yeah.
All right. This was awesome. Thanks for all the information about React Native animations. It was a pleasure having you. If you want to find more out about learning React Native, you can check out galaxies.dev, which is my course platform. We recently launched a new quick start course, so we also have some free resources here, and of course also my YouTube channel. And don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed this. So thanks again, Catalin, and hope you have a great day.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it was amazing. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.